I am writing this for no particular reason other than my own amusement. Now, as the title of this post says, I don't need help. I am perfectly safe and sound. I am comfortable typing all of this in my chair on my computer. I am not currently hidden inside a cabin and posting this from my phone as a means of reaching out to someone. I want to make it abundantly clear that I was not out on a walk last week, and I was not kidnapped by 3 men in cultist robes. Seeing as how I was never kidnapped, I should add that I was not taken to a stone altar deep in the woods. Also, I did not witness several people get sacrificed on it by getting carved open with ceremonial daggers. There was no ritualistic chanting, and the victims' blood did not drip onto a pattern of runes carved into the altar. Their blood did not seep into the altar as if it were a giant sponge. The runes did not begin to glow. The air never rippled in the slightest. No portal ever opened up. There was no monster that resembled a scaly humanoid manticore that came out of the portal. It did not grab 2 of the cultists, much to their shock, and proceed to devour them alive. The other cultists did not realize their mistake and attempt to flee. Due to this fact, I was unable to escape while the monster fed on the cultists, because there were no cultists and there is no monster. As I said, I am currently sitting at home and not in a cabin. Therefore, it is not possible for me to have a journal left by one of the cultists that gives information about the monster that I want to reiterate was not summoned. Because I don't have this hypothetical journal, I can't share its contents. I am unable to share the fact the monster, which again doesn't exist, is named Conlumite. He can't pursue his goal of devouring his victims and consuming their life energy, so he can reach full strength due to his non-existence. I should also mention that the journal, which does not exist, says absolutely nothing about Conlumite also becoming stronger when people are directly told about him. The obvious remedy to this, if he did exist, would be to warn people about him indirectly. However, he doesn't exist, so there is zero need to do this. I hear no screams outside, nor do I hear the roar of Conlumite, because he can't roar due to the fact he is not real. Therefore, it is unnecessary for me to say that his roar sounds like glass being ground up in a blender. There is no Clumite, so mentioning this is pointless. With this in mind, it is also equally pointless to mention that I can't hear him getting closer to me. Nobody was pounding on the door a short while ago, begging to be let in. They were not silenced by Conlumite by having their neck broken. The cabin, which I am not currently in, has no runes carved into it, which gives me protection from Conlumite. He isn't looking at me through one of the windows and smiling. His smiles reveal no rows of jagged and sharp blood-covered teeth. He isn't licking his lips in anticipation for me to go outside. Now, if I actually had been kidnapped by some cultists and seen them perform sacrifices and Conlumite really did exist, I would find that problematic. As a matter of fact, I would go as far to say that I would be very frightened if that were the case. If I were in this predicament, I might even try to reach out to someone for information on how to stop Conlumite, because the non-real journal doesn't say how to. Of course, if you have any ideas, you could play along by putting the word, not before say banning ritual instructions of some kind. or something close to the word not. There would be no need to do this, other than humoring me. As I said, I would be terrified out of my mind right now if the stuff I mentioned did happen and Conalmite was real. But they didn't, and he isn't. I am perfectly fine. Stop. No, don't look. It just encourages them. You know who I am talking about. Them. More specifically, her. Keep those eyes focused here. Don't look. Don't even glance. Use your peripherals, because I know you see her. Just at the very edge of your vision. Glance to the left side of the monitor, but don't glance beyond it. There. Your peripherals should have picked up a bit more. You saw her in the corner, didn't you? You saw her black hair billowing across her pale face, the loose nightgown she wears over her emaciated frame. She's been there for a while, just waiting. That's how they spend their time. The spirits of the damned. The ones unfit for heaven, yet avoiding hell. The ones who walk the earth with their sins on their shoulders. They live in constant, insurmountable, indescribable pain. The story goes that when St. Peter takes pity on a soul who has committed a grave sin like murder, rape, torture, cannibalism or worse, he punishes that soul and sends them back to our plane to exist among the living until they've successfully repented for their sins. But first, he rips out their eyes so that they can covet naught. Then he tears their jawbone from their skull so that they cannot speak evils. No. Don't look. She has moved closer, but that is only her curiosity. She can't actually see you, not as you could see her. She sees in outlines, in blurs and motions. Her empty sockets let her see a person's soul, yet it is useless to her. She lives not on the person, but on the body. Her spirit hungers for communion of the flesh, but she is eternally denied. Only the Savior can be a proper conduit of communion, to satisfy her cravings. She has tried, though. She has tried often in the past. She certainly has taken an interest in you, hasn't she? You see, she feeds on the living. She, like many before her, found humans to alleviate her ailments. She starves for communion, but humans like yourself can work as a placebo of sorts. She'll try to get you to turn, to see into the voids which take residence over where her eyes used to be. She'll pull you in, hypnotizing you with the dark hollow sockets. She'll close in even more, excitedly exhaling on your supple skin. She'll drop her rotted teeth into your slender neck and lap the blood with her flopping tongue. I'll scrape in with my fangs and scoop out your flesh like ice cream. I'll yelp with glee at the warmth of your innards as I slash into your fatty abdomen. I'll pull the bones from their sinew and suck the marrow out, like a candied filling. I'll jab my bony fingers into your eyes and take them for my own. I'll rip your jawbone from your skull and use it as my own. I'll become whole again, with your help. But it'll only work if you look. This is the night we can roam freely into your world. Don't mind me, I am just someone who has stories to tell. I don't mean to either harm or save your kind, the living ones, and I have no such power. Did you know that when we die we have recollection of all the former lives we lived? Let's start by explaining this part. As any mildly smart person already realized, our fragile organic matter isn't enough to explain why we think, why we exist. We have a spark that precedes and outlives the body, the outside. This spark would be called the soul by most, or anima. The soul's real existence is the other side, the immaterial world. From time to time, the soul is allowed to roam the ugly, heavy physical realm to look for a vessel, being built inside of a woman's guts. If no spark arrives in time to possess the inert matter, a miscarriage happens. To sum it up, that's how a person is born. The anima chooses to connect to what will develop in a human body. The anima is, as far we know, eternal. So life should have a greater meaning and purpose. That's what you are thinking, right? Oh, how little all of you know. It matters not what you do through your material existence, as long as you die a different way each time. That's right, the obnoxious, shallow, senseless meaning of existence is nothing but dying. And not only dying, but finding new ways to do so. Life is nothing but the source for a twisted sticker book made of deaths. On the other side, you have a literal collection of all your deaths, and you know exactly how many and which deaths you have achieved yet, and how many and which you haven't. Somehow it's freeing, isn't it? Your job? It could be anything. Your gender and race? It makes no difference in the big picture. You were dealt bad cards in life? No justice for you. You were gay? No hell for you. You lived a good life? Good. Because it's not getting any better than this. Across the centuries, and then the millennia, we leave the comfort of the so-called eternal life to purposely put ourselves through this shit. You say you didn't want to be born? Believe me, you were bored out of your mind when you decided to come. Of course, filling the sticker book one life at a time takes forever, especially because after we are born, we forget what we are here for. And it's not unusual to end up dying the same old boring deaths. It means wasting 70 whole years or so. So there is a trick to make your collection grow faster. You can steal from others. In what you call afterlife, we spend most of our time this way, battling for each other's conquests. But this is rarely fun anymore. We all know each other's ruses and strategies. So we come to this world to steal. But I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? I'm sure that you have a question now. What's the point? When your sticker book is complete, a blinding and warm light envelops you. You're taken somewhere else. Maybe it's eternal bliss and prize for winning the sick game of existence. Maybe It's something far worse than the boredom we've been enduring since we acquired our senses of self. No one knows what happens. The ones who do never came back to tell us, but we want to find out. The point is crossing to the greater unknown, whatever it might be. That's what the man in the hat told me at the bar, his yellowed teeth gleaming in the poorly lit corner of the counter where we talked. Of course you think I'm nothing but a crazy drunken. So what about seeing it for yourself? As I said, I didn't come to bring harm. This is completely non-personal. I had no time to react as he produced a dagger from inside his buttered suit, and he stole a death from me. Now I am telling you this. His words were real. I have my own sticker album too, far meager than his. So if you think your life has no purpose, what about you come and find me? Dear John, please, I want you to break free from the simulation. I know, okay? I know how it sounds like. But hey, you have to remember. You have to remember New Year's Eve in 2012, when they came from the sky. They came and bombed it all. They got rid of everyone who was mentally strong, and only the worst of us survived. The weak-willed ones. The servile ones. Everyone you met after that might be one of them. So I need you to make this exercise with me, okay? Finish reading it, then do it. Please. Please, John. You're the only family I have now. You're the only one I can count on to break free from the shackles. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Try to understand with your body how the environment feels. Wrong. The air is heavy. The air is killing you. And I don't mean that oxygen slowly oxidizing your lungs. I mean the air is meant to kill you in a few years, especially if you try to cross the great beyond. The great beyond is the place I am now. Mom and Dad have made through it, but they only survived for a few years. It's a resistance, John. Every day is a war we never win. We are outnumbered, but we are free. We know. If people like you break free too, I know that we can win. After closing your eyes, taking a deep breath and realizing something is wrong with the air, try to really focus on the shift. The shift started on January 1st, 2013. There are a few minutes in between where we somehow floated in space, and we were so afraid. Try to really remember this fear. I know it is still stuck on your gut. I know it's something so visceral and unforgettable that you only need to carefully search for it inside you. You will find it. Everyone will find it. After you find this fear inside you, open your eyes and close them really fast. You'll start to see the small cracks, the little disruptions on the simulation around you. It's vivid. It's superior to our brains in every sense, but it's been around for a long time now. It's not perfect. It has weak spots. We, ourselves, made sure to erode it little by little every time we could leave the hideout. I risked everything, making it more breakable around you. I want you to see it too. Please, John, you have to remember. Once you see the world for what it really is now, a horrible place filled with disgusting beings that control you, you can never go back to the cage. It's so scary, but it's even scarier to be none the wiser. I know. The fake society is somewhat frightening and controlling too, but believe me, nothing compares to what it really is. I wish we lived in an awful but relatively peaceful world, like they have you believe you do. But you don't. Please come with me. Giselle and I lost our dad in 2014, then our mother in 2015. They were always together, even in death. I like to think Dad laughed it off as Mom always being late. Then, not long after, my sister lost her mind. I did the best for her. I put her on a humane institution that would actually care for her. I have struggled financially so she'd be as safe and happy as someone like her could. She was my only sister. Schizophrenia. They tried everything. I allowed experimental treatments even. Everything to make her better. To have her come home. To have her meet my wife and my daughter. To have her become someone who can be part of a family. This is the last letter I got from her, earlier this year. Now she's gone too. And I felt that I owed her to at least try her little exercise. My sister was crazy. So why I just opened my eyes and saw myself in a devastated building, surrounded by rains of acid, where demi-human people desperately collect scraps to feed their inhuman lords? Why are there tentacles coming out of my wife's face? At first it was fun seeing people stricken by the dancing plague. They dropped everything they were holding, stopped everything they doing to dance. I was at the supermarket when it happened, so it was harmless enough. It affected around 1/3 of the people in there, not me. As soon as I headed outside, I realized it wasn't as funny as it had seemed, when multiple cars had crashed because their drivers absolutely needed to get up and dance. Moving through the streets became a hard task, not only because of the crashed vehicles and the risk of being crushed by a ton of metal suddenly left unattended, but also because the myriad of dancers compulsively moving to some inaudible yet contagious beat. They sometimes trampled each other, and soon the streets were chaos. The dancing was deranged. Their tempo was oddly synchronized, but each person danced in a different manner, all of them thrusting their limbs and head with such intensity it might fall off. I shoved my way through them, and I was very happy when I safely made it back home. But my house was far from a safe haven. I live in the suburbs with my grandmother and teenage brother. The latter was sobbing on the couch when I arrived. "Oh, thank God," he exclaimed and hugged me. A very unusual behavior. We got along well, but you know, not that well. "What's the matter, Art?" "Grandma wouldn't stop dancing." "I locked her in your office." "Sorry." "She was dancing around the whole house like a crazy puppet, and I felt overwhelmed." 1/3 of the people. "I guess I'll go check on her," I replied. "Don't. Something else happened." After hearing a loud thump, Arthur figured that our grandma fell, so he went to the office and checked on her. She couldn't get up, but her collapsed body was still gracelessly jerking to some rhythm that was imperceptible to his ears, and her eyes showed madness. She bit him when he tried to help her get up. "She bit you?" I confirmed, surprised. He nodded and showed me an ugly, blackened wound. "Holy fuck, her mouth has some strong bacteria." "I'll see what I can do," I replied. "Are you listening to this beat?" My brother started to space out, looking around to see where it was coming from. "It's the best thing I have ever heard." His arms started tweaking, first lightly, then intently. For a couple of minutes his eyes were distant and glassy, and he danced with certain dignity, like a raver on a good trip. Then something kind of obsessive possessed his face and, just like the dancers in the street, he started jolting his body with all his strength, knocking down objects and furniture on his way. And even ignoring that, in his eagerness to dance, he was banging his own body against the walls. I was scared of him. Not knowing what else to do, I grabbed all the food I had bought and barricaded myself in my bedroom for the night. When I woke up the next day, I smelled rot. It was coming from my office. It's hard to describe my sweet grandmother as a zombified, jostling monster, but that's what she had become. Through the night, she had danced until 3 of her limbs fell off. Her remaining leg was black and putrefied, on the edge of being lost too. The overwhelming decay that filled the room made me projectile vomit. I closed the door and decided to check on my little brother. But first, just to make sure, I grabbed the old pistol from our late father. It had been 10 years, but I was confident that I still knew how to shoot, if necessary. It was. When I went downstairs, I realized that we had company. My brother wasn't as rotten as Grandma. His limbs were still fine, but the skin and flesh from his mouth had fallen off, exposing his whole teeth, creepy and menacing, without the cover of the gums. The semi-devoured body of our neighbor, Lisa, lay on the messy floor. Lisa constantly came to check on us and bring us some of her cooking. I had no choice but to shoot my baby brother, or whatever became of him. The TV and the internet were very inconclusive. The news mentioned that at least 20% of the population decided to dance like mindless puppets until exhaustion, but nothing about rotting in a matter of hours or trying to eat others. However, it was a matter of looking outside the window to realize they were trying to cover up how awful the situation actually was. On the street, piles and piles of corpses were trampled by those barely alive who still managed to dance until their legs decomposed and didn't allow them to anymore. The smell of rot is unbearable. I want to burn the 3 corpses I have in my house, but I'm afraid to go outside and get bitten. I want to stay safer now. Maybe I won't even have to worry about it. After a few hours alone, still barricaded in my room, I think I hear a faint, irresistible melody, and my legs are suddenly restless.